Good.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sean Carey, and I'm with,
Dr. Bill Moss.
and we're so excited because we have a really special episode. It's actually been a few weeks since we've recorded one live, even though recordings have still been going on.
Yeah.
And we really want to talk about the importance of the warrior energy when you're working as a healer. Either you're on the healing journey or that you're serving others as a healer, but how we really need to be a warrior in today's world to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this because I think as healers, the natural default for most people is to really really give and serve and love and help and provide light in a healing environment. And there's a lot you're up against when, number one, when you are personally going through healing, but also in addition, if you are a healer, you're always up against a lot of external forces that require a different type of energy and
Yeah.
um, kind of side different type of energy to really help balance and create some stability and form to help people heal.
Yeah, and even when if we start off just talking with the about the physical, you want to eat healthy, you go out to a restaurant, oftentimes they're cooking this stuff in weird
Mm,
oils. Maybe you have to I can't eat gluten, so I have to make sure these different items don't have gluten in them. And
yeah.
often and double check to make sure it's not in a sauce or that type of thing.
Mm,
And if you don't stand up for those things, those aspects that seem little, like you can't really live your full level of health. And
yeah.
same with the water we're drinking, same with the air that we're breathing. What if there's like a mold issue where you live? Like you might have to stand up and be like, no, this is something that needs to get corrected. That stuff is happening around us all the time. And we need to be our own best advocate in terms to actually be able to have a healthy environment. And to do that, because we live in a world where there's so much toxicity and pollution, even on the physical plane, we really need to be a warrior.
Yeah, I like how you frame that. It's like as simple as if you want to make a change, like whatever people decide to start pursuing a level of healing when they've had enough. Sometimes
Yeah.
that's the motivation. Like, okay, I've had enough. I've had enough of whatever this aspect of myself or this condition that's been plaguing me. So I'm going to do something about it. And a lot of times the comfort has created some of that problem. And
Yeah.
then when you make the decision, like, okay, we've all probably diet is such a good one to relate. When you make that change, a lot of times we don't fully even understand all of the things that we're going to come up against, like when you go out to eat, when you're traveling, when you're trying to pack snacks or going on a trip, because there's so many ways to just opt out of the
Yeah.
initial and if you don't have even that helps bring and show what the warrior energy actually is, because you need it to stick to whatever that goal is that you're going to see
Yeah.
through. And it might not be forever, but it definitely going to be for a period of time, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's such an active part of us really using our will is like we need to have that warrior
Mm,
spirit
mhm.
because it's like when you're in that healing journey, like if you there are certain things that we really need, I think, that are foundational for healing. Like
Yeah.
we need self-love, we need to
Mm,
be able to forgive, we need to have self-worth. Like those are foundations for our healing. And
mhm.
if you don't have those things, you're gonna always have physical stuff going on, you'll always have emotional stuff going on, your mind's not gonna be at peace.
Yeah.
And we have to really be able to even fight for ourselves and say, I'm worthy of living a great life. Like to stand up
Yeah.
against our own negativity and
Yeah.
our own sense of comfort. Like if we don't want to go to the gym or whatever, but to stand up against those things, be like, you know what? No, I am amazing at what I do, and I deserve to be paid well. I
Mhm.
am, worthy of love and uh, being treated in the most wonderful way. And it's not the norm in today's society, I think, to have that type of inner dialogue and clarity.
Mm.
And it's really largely because we're not using a warrior spirit. We're accepting the negativity that's going around us, and we're letting it be within us. We didn't properly set our boundaries to keep that stuff
Mm.
out.
Yeah, and a lot of times it leads to we see it in justifications, right? That's
Yeah.
where we start to see the compromise that's been made. Well, oh, well, this weekend was tough. I didn't sleep that well, and I was on a trip, and there weren't good choices available for myself. And not only do we start doing that, but what did the people do in response when we're so used to doing that that we
Yeah.
automatically jump and be like, oh, you're right. It's probably okay. It's
Yeah.
probably not a big deal that you stick to that commitment that you made to yourself and that was really sounded quite important to you.
Yeah, yeah. And when you have a coach or something like that, like, say you have, like, a
Yeah.
sports coach, like, part of their job is to hold that line for you and be like, "No, I
Mhm.
get that you didn't sleep well, like, run another mile." Eh But
Yeah,
without it,
yeah.
you'll never be a champion without that.
No.
And,
And
you know
yeah. Yeah, that's kinda yeah, I was just the first thing that popped in my mind when you said that was like, oh my gosh, when you have a child, like, and they're an infant and, everything, like, I don't
Yeah,
know how that's how people get broken with it. You need a warrior spirit. Like, there's some
yeah.
days you absolutely do not sleep. You get crummy
Mhm.
sleep, and it's not good, and you're starting to get sick, and you have to take care of people, and it can be quite a challenge, and Lauren and I joke that it it's like so much easier because of that. And I think that's where the magic is in the
Yeah,
warrior essence is the fact that when you actually stick to these commitments, it's like you actually come away being like, what else can I do? What else am I
yeah,
capable of doing? And I know whenever I go through a bigger process, that's usually the thing, the self-talk and self-love that starts to come through is like, wow, look how I overcame this. And I think that's how I ended up becoming a chiropractor. It was like that's
yeah,
how I switched paradigms, if you will, going from like a very medically minded upbringing uh and that was my go-to, like a medical solution for any ill or symptom. And then to go completely to the opposite direction, it was because every little overcoming led to this newfound strength of like, well, maybe I'm more capable. Maybe my body's smarter. Maybe I know how to heal. Maybe I
yeah,
wasn't destined to be sick and problematic, if you will, for forever. So I think those little accomplishments create a new level of self-love and self-talk that makes it worth it. You know?
yeah. Absolutely, and even, like, to be a chiropractor or whether you're an acupuncturist or therapist or whatever, it's just so, like being a chiropractor, we so often go against the grain as far as what people
Mm.
typically believe in terms of health. Like there's a
Yeah.
level of mediocrity that society has accepted with health. Like 40%
So
of children now have at least one chronic disease. We look at the obesity rates. I think it's like almost 30% everywhere. That we're just people are on so many
yeah.
medications. People are really sick, and for us to say like, "Hey, your body's actually meant to be healthy," it's just
Right.
like even that simple statement, which is the probably easiest foundation shared among many disciplines. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna hit up against some crud with that because people are like, oh, well, why am I not healthy?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that where we're not applying that warrior spirit. Society's not applying that warrior spirit to our own health. But
Mm.
if we want to actually make a difference for people, we really have to. We really have to remind people that they have the power to make these changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why, if you're a chiropractor listening to that, because we definitely have a lot of friends who are chiropractors and colleagues who have been listening to this. It's kind of like that calling is evident in the chiropractic profession. They've
Yeah,
The warrior has always been the person that like holds true to what the principles are of chiropractic because they've been going against the grain for over a century
yeah,
at this point. And I remember kind of getting into it and going to different conferences, and you'd almost have uh that like battle cry type of
yeah,
feeling. And it's good because when you realize like the mainstream thought patterns and comfortability, it's like the enemy for people people expressing themselves to their full potential. I mean, we walk around, and when I teach meditation, it's kind of like what we have 60,000 thoughts every day, roughly. 95% of them are the ones you had yesterday, and most of them are negative. So it's like we are
Mhm.
literally running around perpetually, or perpetuating the same kind of internal rhetoric that keeps us
Yeah,
small, that keeps us weak, that keeps us unhealthy. And then it takes being around a confident, strong person who's has experience, right? Like I don't love
yeah,
conviction for the sake of like, falsity, where people are just,
yeah,
you're running around with false confidence. But at this point in our career, it's a much easier to be warriors because we heard about it, and then
yeah,
we had to give it a shot, and we're like, you know what? Yeah, there's a lot of people, a lot of kids, a lot of parents that can overcome these healing crises with new directions in different ways that they didn't explore before. And I think I've learned to love this. I think this was really hard for me when I first got into practice because I wanted
mhm,
everyone to like me. I wanted
yeah,
everyone to like healing and like my alternative quote
yeah,
approach and what I was about. And it's like the reality is that's not how people um how people typically receive it.
yeah, yeah. People so often it's like they operate from their comfort zones, and it is so natural. Like we do, yeah. Like you don't get into a healing profession if you're not somebody who cares about people. So
Right.
oftentimes it's like you care, you want people to like you, and you want to make them happy. But it's not always what people need. It's like sometimes they need
Yeah.
that structure. Like, no, like here's the plan. Like you have to do it this way because otherwise we're not going to get the result that's possible
Hmm.
for you.
Hmm.
Or there's yeah, like you're gonna have to make these changes or have these disciplines on your own as part of what you're doing with the care here. Because
Hmm.
otherwise you also aren't gonna get the result.
Yeah.
And if people aren't applying their will in the right way, like they just really end up missing out in the default. Like we talk about the default in physics is entropy, it's disorder. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with our health. It's like the default is a negative thing. So if
Hmm.
you're not applying your will, which is that warrior energy, the result is likely going to be negative. And in
Mm.
our society, we've forgotten that, like how important that spirit is.
Yeah, because we think of like warrior as being destructive,
Yeah,
just for destroying, just for the sake of destroying, and like,
yeah,
and just brutally breaking something apart and messing it up. We don't think of it as like this energy that's used when necessary to help with the
yeah,
development and reconstruction, to make something better. Where that's what it really is. There's nothing there's no healing that doesn't require some form of discipline. It's not events.
mhm,
We've talked about this before, and I love to reflect that is like it's not an event that just makes all the difference. It's the sequence of
yes,
sticking to small choices that may be small events over time, but it's not just one that just, then you're magically the same. Like you said, everything breaks down. And if we don't maintain it, it becomes more broken. And we see that even in research as far as like, well, weight loss and strength is concerned, that like if people aren't lifting weights after they become or hit age 50, if they're not applying that discipline, they're going to lose
yep,
more mass. They're going to
yep,
deteriorate to a higher degree. So it's like even different points in our life, certain um, practices become more relevant uh, to incorporate and utilize in a disciplined manner because we don't get to keep our physical matter forever.
yeah,
Um, and that's probably a whole episode too. We don't really talk about that because people do get obsessed with the fact that like I wanna, like, living forever
yeah,
is, like, the goal, or, and even just keeping every aspect of your health forever, it's like, we don't exactly get to do that, so, um
yeah.
mhm,
And that we could talk about that, like because it is like there's this probably fear of death is a big thing for people,
yeah,
and fear like that's motivating some of that trying hyper control.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
one of the things I don't know if we've officially talked about or not, but there is something called orthorexia, where it's like basically an obsession with being healthy.
Yeah.
And I see that with clients sometimes where it's like there's not an understanding that we have these physical bodies that break down over time. And if
Mhm.
you obsess over like every little thing that can potentially go wrong, like you're going to be in a mental and emotional world of misery because it's like, oh, my eye twitched. Like, is that cancer? To be kind of silly, but that people do that stuff all the time. That would be
Oh,
like the extreme degree, but we have
yeah.
to watch out. We have to watch out for what's happening within us, where those fears are really heightened, because on a stress level, you're producing stress hormone. Your body's breaking down. You're putting yourself in a state of suffering if
Mhm.
that's going on unchecked.
Yeah. No, I think we have talked about that, but it's so like anybody who works with people who
Yeah,
are, as you are a healer of some format, like I didn't think that was real. I kind of thought that was like a bullshit diagnosis when it first came
yeah,
out years ago. And I
yeah,
was like, that's crazy. Now they're creating a diagnosis for people who want to be healthy. But
yeah,
working with it is a very real thing. And it's like people try to control and that's not what we're talking about with like discipline, right? Is like
right,
that OCD, like I need to do it in this way or it's not going to work out kind of pattern actually ends up usually creating more anxiety and a lack
yeah,
of health because it's just so there's so much rigidity because you do every I used to be lactose intolerant. I can handle all
yeah,
kinds of dairy now. Like, why is that? Is it because I was so rigid that I thought nothing could change? No, it's because I understand that over time you basically have a new physical body. And if you make
yeah,
new choices, it doesn't mean you're never going to be able to do something again. It just means maybe at this point in my life, this
yeah,
isn't working for a reason.
yeah,
And, that's something that I go back to is because when people get so rigid with their nutrition, and that can change over time, you can live the
yeah,
same area and not have allergies and then have them for a period of
yeah,
time, but then
yeah,
they go away. So it's not about having the same. I think this is important as a warrior has to be adaptable because
yeah,
there's going to be different requirements at any given time that are going to create the best situation and you have to be ready for that to then also change, right?
yeah. Absolutely. And knowing like and knowing when to be that warrior too, as far as like knowing when to be the warrior and what you're fighting. And the
Mm,
first battle with like both you and I train as spiritual warriors, and the first battle is always with the self. It's with that negative aspect within the self. Whereas
mhm.
that voice is like, you know what, I didn't sleep well. I'm gonna have a Starbucks like quadruple latte with all that with whipped cream and whatever. Or
Yeah,
like it's that thing that we all have within us that wants to pander to our comfort, that wants to make everything easy, that there's always an excuse for everything, that
yeah,
we're always a victim. This is just the way it is. Nothing that we do will change the outcome. And
yeah.
it's like these frequencies that are part of the human experience, that it's
Mm,
so easy to just end up playing those frequencies. And we have to be a
mhm,
warrior, and we have to say no. Like, no, I'm going to choose something different for myself. I'm going to choose an elevated life, an elevated state of being. And
mhm.
as a practitioner, like this is super important because uh, if we don't have that, we aren't going to have the energy to also help our patients, and it's very hard to share what you don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing, and people know that. Like, if a healthcare provider or somebody who does healing work doesn't exude what the people are looking for, there's going
Yeah,
to be a difficulty. And I hear that all the you probably hear this. I hear it all the time when people are like, I was going to this doctor, and I'm not saying chiropractor, I'm saying like I'm going to a doctor and he just isn't healthy. So I
yeah,
really have a hard time taking that person's advice because, you know, uh, we innately kind of know that like the way people care for themselves is how they would it should be congruent with the recommendations that they're giving. Like there should be. And I know that each time I refine myself, like you were saying, starts with the self, that
yeah,
you we can better help lead other people in a very compassionate way, right? In a
yeah, yeah,
compassionate way, as opposed to like, you need to do it this way or it's not going to work
yeah,
out for you. It's like I have compassion for myself because I also don't work out as often as I want to.
Yeah.
at times, but then I've also gotten myself back on track. So I have compassion for myself, and I can have compassion for you. And I know that those seasons can change. And I think when we're talking about this discipline that needs to be done is like people want to feel good while they're doing all the things that are going to help them be good. But by doing the things when you're not feeling good, it actually helps create the reverse. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying with that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We need to, those little victories are really important. Like the little victories of, you don't have that, that cookie, if it's just
Yeah.
not the right thing, or that the third cookie or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But those little victories, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna hit my snooze button. Like
Yeah.
these are all those energies of the warrior. I'm gonna go to bed on time because I need to,
Yeah.
be rested.
I'm
And
gonna stop drinking coffee for 2 weeks because to prove to myself that I'm not addicted to anything, you know?
yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I do. I try to, like, every year, like, quit for periods of time because I'm like 'cause so I say to myself, "I can." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I love it. I need to do that actually. I haven't. I'm in the middle of a coffee addiction right now, so I gotta break that.
it's easy. I broke it for Warriors of Light, and then, I haven't come back with a vengeance though. A lot of times when this is definitely like, if
Yeah,
you want to talk about where do we fall short, we could probably just make
yeah,
this episode on like the reality is, um, no, I love coffee. That's like the thing. Like
yeah.
I don't even like
Me too.
decaf, but I do like to kind of quit every so often to prove that I can. And most
Yeah.
times after I quit, I'm just going to be real honest, is I come back like with a vengeance. It's like it like I drink more of it then afterwards. But this time that hasn't been the case. I've actually been
Yeah.
pretty light with it. So I feel good about that.
Yeah, it's like my, like, number one, vice right now. It's like, sugar, I'm doing good with sugar.
Yeah.
There's no alcohol or cigars or anything like
Yeah.
that, but there is that caffeine.
I know. It's just like the warmth of it and everything. So,
Yeah,
but
it's
I don't know if we talked about the warmth study. Warm drinks actually make people's brain centers light up, and they treat people better, and they're kinder, and they perceive people as nicer, warmer. And that's true of coffee and tea. So it's like what's in a word, but when we drink those things, hey, look, I'm justifying it for you. Oh,
I was gonna say I drink iced coffee typically. What does that say about
it's
me?
true. Like, yeah, you're cold-hearted and you see
Yeah.
people as cold. No, the doctor I go to, I don't know if we talked about this. This is just the
No.
coolest. I think this is one of the coolest things. But they did a study where basically the participants, did we talk about this? I know I've told you
No,
this.
no, no.
So so I go to an anthroposophic doctor, and they just look at the whole person. So we should definitely have her on here one
Yeah,
time because it's
yeah,
a phenomenal practice. It's out of the philosophy of anthroposophy by Rudolf Steiner, and it's medicine. So it's fantastic. Anyway, one of the stories, I went to her warmth workshop, and she told this story where the study was basically when you walked into a, I don't know, let's say 5-story, 10-story building, but you walked in on the first floor, and as soon as the person walked in, the study started. And what they found was when say you were I was greeting you at the door, and we were going in the elevator, and when we were taking that elevator trip, what I would do is I'd pretend I needed to tie my shoe, and I'd give you my warm drink to hold. And you
mm,
held it for basically the length of the elevator ride. And then when we got off, I got my drink back, and then you were offered a warm drink. And you were offered a warm drink, and then you were asked to basically like rate your perception of people, like how they feel. And what they found was, and then they did this with people with cold drinks. They did the same
mm,
thing, but with cold drinks. And they found that the same centers in their brain that lit up during like warm relationships and warm communication are directly related to the same centers when we're actually physically warm. So what people found was it showed that the people who had the warm drinks rated people better. They said they were more pleasant, they were more loving, they gave people better ratings, and said they were kinder and things of that nature. And also, the people who were rating them perceived them as being more warm and kind. So it worked from the observer and the person observing. And I was like, wow, that is just so wild. Like a warm drink. That's why we're like drawn to these things can actually
Yeah,
help. And I don't exactly know how that's important to the warrior, but it's just such a great story that helps us understand, like, you know, how we perceive the world. I just thought
yeah.
that was such a cool story.
Well, yeah, that's a really cool factoid to share. I think that something with what we're talking about is like both you and I, like we've fallen short in our journey many times in many different ways.
Yeah.
This warrior piece was certainly something that I struggled with big
Hmm.
time. And the reason I want to do this, or I think we both wanted to do this episode, was it was because something that by not having the proper warrior energy, it really negatively impacted us
Yeah.
because everybody's kind of going on in this battle with their own like inner good and their own inner negativity. And oftentimes your patients or clients are the people in your life. Maybe you're not a practitioner, maybe you're somebody on that healing journey, but the other people in your life, they're losing that battle against negativity.
Hmm.
And so maybe they're irritated or whatever, or they're not feeling great about life. And if we don't have that proper boundary of the warrior, like we're going to let their energy kind of knock us over too. And
Hmm.
when if you're seeing clients all day and you don't have those proper boundaries as far as like, I'm worthy of being treated and with the highest regard, and
Hmm.
that's all that I accept. Like if you don't, and like I love myself and I feel worthy and like all these things that we want to have. If you don't wall off that stuff, that's not good.
Hmm.
You're just gonna get steamrolled by other people's stuff. And
Yeah.
it could be a family member that you love, like maybe there's an aging mother or whatever that you're taking care of, or
Yeah.
but it's a lot of drama and negativity. It could be somebody close to you, but it takes that warrior energy and warrior spirit to say like, no, I am only going to accept the positivity here
Yeah.
from myself and from others.
Yeah. No, it's been that part. I feel like if people haven't seen me in like 7 years, right? Like, when I kind of started on the walking the spiritual path was 2017. Yeah, you life activated me 2016, 2017.
Yeah,
I just didn't have any of that warrior energy. Like I didn't create good boundaries. I didn't I was taking on people's stuff. I was walking around people pleasing all the time. I wanted my clients to accept me, change rules to make things, but gosh, that's just like
yeah,
so not even part of the way I work with people because it's not helpful.
yeah,
It's really not helpful to people's development for everyone to get what they want along the way, and
yeah,
not have to lay down like some boundaries and some discipline along the way. And for me, just a natural, I would consider myself very much a natural kind of healing heart. I was a special
yeah,
education teacher that I just wanted everyone to like be better and the world to be a better place, but I so lacked that severity and that warrior nature to really make the impact that I was looking to do. And
yeah,
with the healing work, people get into healing work because they want people to heal, and they'll tell them all the features and benefits of how this is going to work. But at the end of the day, it's like it really takes that warrior energy to like cut through
yeah,
and help people get past their limiting beliefs and blocks that really make the difference. So for me, it's just like the most vital aspect of
yeah,
um, making progress in your own healing development and with others. So I'm glad you brought this up. This wasn't even a topic that was on like the
yeah,
forefront, but it's probably the most important one. And, the
yeah,
virtues that we're kind of laying down with like discipline, consistency, um, the strength of will, those are all so vital to,
yeah,
making something happen in your
yeah.
life.
Yeah, and you can be that like warrior. Like sometimes the warrior energy is saying no to something.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes it's like even if it's that negative aspect of yourself that doesn't want to get up earlier once at the snooze or whatever,
Hmm.
saying no to that part. Like no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm gonna wake up early. I'm gonna do my practices or whatever it is.
Hmm.
But if you look at like a parent, if you can imagine a parents with a child and the child is never told no, like that's a disaster.
Yeah.
And we see that throughout society when these like people aren't told no, they don't have healthy boundaries or they don't have those disciplines like instilled. it really creates mega problems in the development of a person. And
Yeah.
with their health, if you don't have that, if you don't have that energy, that willpower, that
Mhm.
you're not going to be healthy. Yeah,
No.
because it's the health. Like one of the things we talk about is it's all these little things that build up over time.
Mhm.
It's like, did you get good sleep? Did you drink water? Do you have some basic vitamins and healthy food?
Mhm.
Um, do you have movement? Like that's sunlight. That's 90% of health.
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
you aren't don't have the willpower to do those little things, like you're not going to be healthy.
Right. Yeah, because it's in this day and age, it's really easy to get distracted in all the mundane details of like specifics of the diet and the time of sunlight and the way you're working out or moving your body. And like we've overcomplicated so many of them. And I think that's kind of where that piece of the orthorexia you drew in here. It's like
Yeah,
it almost becomes this massive excuse of like, well, if I just got this right, then it would be something. But like, I mean, gosh, I feel like we're exploring all these topics, but like simplicity of health is like super important.
yeah,
Like you just kind of
yeah,
gave the whole thing. Like, what do you need to be healthy? And most people could make a general list, like you just said, and they're like, I need to get some sunlight. I need some healthy water. I need some healthy movement. I need to get some sleep. I need to take some quiet time. I should probably get outside. And if that's just it, the basic box, well, it's like,
yeah,
the knowledge is 100% there. It's in front of you, but it's this type of energy that is actually going to get it done for somebody.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, and it's whether you're that practitioner or whether you're that client. And in the society, this type of energy, like we've lost touch with, I think.
That's a good one to
They,
say.
yeah, I look at I remember seeing this clip like on Instagram, and it was when JFK was president, and it showed like high schoolers, like basically just like going their physical education stuff. And
Mm,
you look and like all these people are like fit and doing pull-ups and like everybody is fit. And there's this
mhm.
level of like discipline and
Yeah.
pride that we had. But we've kind of lost that along the way in terms of our health.
Mm,
And it's certainly gotten harder. Like there's
yeah.
a lot of things that have made that harder. There's more toxins, there's less whole foods and yada
Hmm.
yada. But that just makes it's even more important to be a warrior now because we're up against more. So
Yeah.
it
Well,
changed
and
the
that's
well.
why I love, we train as spiritual warriors. We train with the Warriors of Life program every year. And I think the most important aspect or part of the missing link is there's a culture of people that want that want that. They want
Yeah,
discipline. They want to see greater meaning in physical motion and to understand kind of the microcosm to the macrocosm, understanding how focus and rhythm and energy and discipline all help assist us as healers as well. And like you said, there used to be maybe more of a culture that embodied that, and there are cultures that embody the spirit you're describing there. It's just not as readily available
yeah,
or obvious. I mean, in different athletics and sports, for sure it is. Like,
yeah,
I was an athlete, and that's part of what I loved about athletics is, and now I look back at athletics and I'm like, what did that teach me? And it's kind of taught
yeah,
me what we're talking about is like, if I can accomplish this, what else can I do?
yeah,
And if I apply the same structure to get a really strong result in something like distance running, okay, where can I apply that structure in my business or in my health
yeah,
or in my family life? So the structure of what it means to be a warrior is so much more impactful when it's practiced. And that's my favorite program that we do in the Modern Mystery School because it just kind of gets me back all to these primal roots of training
yeah,
that I so enjoyed as a child and growing up in athletics and beyond. So,
yeah. It's just that piece that if we dial that piece in correctly, I think it just is perhaps more than any of the others. It just leads to such massive growth for the person.
mhm,
Because
yeah,
without it, you just it's like you may want the car to go in a certain direction, but if you don't
mm,
have enough gas in the car, like you don't have enough willpower, you're just not going to get there. So
yeah, and it's
there's
almost
always
like
going to be obstacles.
it's like the friction that creates the traction for the tires to like actually propel
Yeah.
forward. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's something that's being dropped, and like I see it with clients. I see it with myself. I see it with the world in
Yeah.
general. That
Oh,
when we don't properly own that, it's there's a huge impact that we pay.
yeah. Yeah,
Huge price of
and I would say there's areas right now where I'm really happy about how I'm
yeah,
actively exercising this will, and I think there's
yeah,
others that definitely need improvement.
yeah,
But with clients, it's like I've heard clients. One of my clients, they like put a gym in their place like years ago, and I'm like, how's that gym? And they're like, oh, I just finished it. I'm like, have you worked out in it yet? No.
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, yeah,
and I've done this where you're like getting ready to get ready, right?
yeah,
And that's not the best way to do it.
yeah,
If I
yeah,
just have the next piece of equipment or whatever it is.
yeah, yeah, and that's that negative voice where it's just like, oh, there's always a reason to not get started with something. Even with this podcast, like we have to do this all the time because it's like my throat was a little bit sore. It's like, like a part of me wanted to text and be like, hey, can we do this a different day? But
Oh, yeah,
like there's always those things that pop up.
totally.
You know, like if we just only waited to do a podcast and we had plenty of time and we were well rested and we weren't juggling 80 other things and
It would probably be
it,
shit then, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, I'm not a night person at all. Like,
Yeah,
I'm worthless.
you know.
I'm super worthless, and we record almost every one of these episodes at night, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
I just hardly can do anything after, like, 8 o'clock. And half the time before this podcast, I put my daughter to bed, and, like, if I'm tired, I'm, like, ready to fall asleep with her. Like, I hang out there for, like, 5
yeah,
minutes while she falls asleep, and I'm like, "Dude, maybe we should pick a." I was actually thinking this before. I was like, maybe we should pick a different day. Maybe there's a better day this week. I don't want to do it on a Monday.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
amazing. But then that now we're here talking about it. I usually take that as like oh, okay, that's why this
yeah,
is more important because I have that feeling. Um, and it
yeah,
does feel important. We've had about 15 episodes. I don't know when this one gets dropped somewhere in there. And just the amazing feedback that we get from people about how this is like helping snap some just pieces around healing together has been really, really great. And I believe that that the world doesn't necessarily need more knowledge about healing. They need more of this. They need more
yeah,
discipline. They need
yeah,
more of that warrior energy to just stick to something.
yeah,
And I think that's becoming like a theme that's showing up more and more um, across the board, where we've complicated everything to the point that now people are getting a little bit more back to basics.
yeah.
In
Oh,
this.
I was reading something that was talking about one of the things that decreases all cause mortality. So basically, decreases your risk of dying from everything. And
Okay.
it's walking. I believe it's walking like over like 6,000 steps per day.
Okay.
It's every I forget the exact numbers, but every like 1,000 steps decreases your percentage of all cause mortality by let's say 5%. So
Okay.
just simply walking, like if you walk 10,000 steps a day, like that, you've just decreased your risk of dying by a significant amount. Just walking.
I
And
love that. We should look up all those little things because there's a bunch. I just saw the recent study, like the racket sports one. Did you see
yeah,
it? Have you seen this?
no, I haven't been
Where
to that.
basically racket sports they have identified like are the best extenders of life. And that means tennis, pickleball, and ping pong. They're like beyond any other sport. They're the best at extending life. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But it makes sense, from a neurological perspective, like
Yeah,
how sharp does that coordination keep you? And they are sports that you can basically participate at almost any age. So, if people needed another reason to like jump on the pickleball train at this point, it's like it actually is going to help create. Here's the cool thing about this. If you do those, it's going to create longevity, but it's going to create sharpness, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like if you need a new discipline to incorporate in your healing world, you should probably take Sean's advice and start walking 10,000 steps and then start playing
yeah.
some racket sports. And then
The
we just gave you
yeah,
two things to really
yeah,
be disciplined about that are going to make a pretty big difference, you know?
yeah, and what a massive difference that makes for people, but it doesn't have to be hard.
Uh-uh.
because one of the I think one of the things we're talking about here too is there's this perfectionism or whatever, or this OCD or
Mm.
whatever we want to call it,
Yeah.
but it's like everything has to be just right. Like I have to have a
Mm.
personal trainer, with the best plan and the best gym and then the
Mhm.
best protein powder and all those things. But it's like,
Mhm.
well, the research has shown like walking is going to be really good for you. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's too with clients where it's like they push themselves too much, and you see their body breaking down as a result. So,
Yeah.
simply like that's less of a case than people not pushing themselves enough.
Yeah.
Uh, but simply applying our will to for those simple things that produce great fruits, like
Yeah.
walking,
It's
water, good sleep.
and now that you said that, like, I was involved in running, and I do end up taking care of a decent amount of people, at least chiropractically in the running world. And do you know how hard it is for a runner to not run? And when
Yeah,
somebody's been doing it forever, like, sometimes they have to utilize that I'm just gonna give it up. I'm gonna do something different because I've had people, they need to do that. It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
it's not the healthiest, it's not the healthiest sport for a person hormonally, physically, like, to the degree where you're running marathons every year and half marathons
yeah,
every year. I mean, I get it. People can do it and stuff, but my friend Tommy John, he always would say, like, what do you wanna look like, a sprinter or a distance runner? And there's some truth to that. I was a distance runner, um, but they just don't look as healthy. And year after year after year, like, I've had a client, he just wants to do it so bad, but it just doesn't work.
yeah,
At this point, it just isn't healthy. He's has so many imbalances, and his discipline now is to not do it.
yeah, yeah.
You
Uh,
know?
yeah, it's such an important awareness to have. And also too, it's like, where are we applying that warrior energy? Sometimes we have to like apply it towards like that voice within that's one
Mhm.
not doing enough. So
Yeah.
like I am gonna not get up. Like if a snooze button goes off, I'm still going
Mhm.
to get up
Mhm.
on time. Or versus like, no, you don't need to you don't need to do that. Like,
Yeah.
for example, I love fasting sometimes, like, my body
Mhm.
just really thrives with it. So periodically, I might do,
Yeah, you've lost a lot of weight this year with fasting,
yeah,
right?
like, fasting
Yeah.
and then just cleaning my diet, and it was, essentially what I did is I periodically fast, but
Mhm.
I really cleaned up my diet where I, just started cooking my own meals,
That's awesome.
and I ate out a lot before just because I often have late days and might
Mhm.
work through lunch or whatever. But, like, I buy my food from the local farm, I cook really good meals, it's great ingredients, it's simple, like, very,
Mhm.
very simple food, but it's delicious, and then I lost a ton of weight doing that,
That's
um,
great.
but periodically I fast, and, one thing I have to watch out for sometimes is, I love the high, there's a spiritual high that you get from it, and there's this mental clarity, and it's just like, my body really thrives on it. But there are times where I'm like, "Oh, you know what? My body maybe was a little bit run down. Maybe my body actually doesn't want this right now." And you
Yep.
have to listen and be like, "Oh, this is just isn't the right time."
Mhm.
Another thing I like to do is parasite cleansing, and, so
Mm.
periodically do that. I think that's good for people to do a couple times a year. But I also have to listen to my body with it and be like, "Okay, it's just not the right time." Or it is
Mhm.
the right time, and this is a good process to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have some similar things, like cycles with the year. Like, there's usually a window of about, like, 3 weeks in the winter where I just kinda shut it down and don't work out, because I found that there's this window of pushing and through the holidays and stuff that,
Yeah.
if I push too much, I end up, like, needing months to get back and recover. And after kinda trial and error, I like to have, like, a basically a solid time off where I really just kinda step back, and it's helped, like, with my energy and rebound. And I usually find a time in the summer where I maybe do, like, a week or so where I'm not focused on it. There's seasons and rhythms that occur every year, and I think most people try to override all their health decisions without taking into consideration the cycles of the year, which are super
Yeah,
important. Especially when you
yeah,
live in a four season type of place. Like, there are some things that your body goes through, and rhythms and sleep. My daughter, the interesting thing about her with one rhythm that I watch her adapt to, is she goes to sleep when it's dark. So it's like
Mm.
in the summer, her bedtime starts to creep up and up till almost 9 o'clock. And then in the winter, it starts to go back down almost to like 7 o'clock very easily or earlier. And that's
Yeah.
ever since she was an infant, even up through she's almost 5. It's like I've just watched her hit that like I'm done point
Yeah.
approximately like an hour from whenever the sun goes down. It's quite fascinating. And we kind of just stick to that rhythm because we see it in her. But what we try to do as adults is we like, well, no, this is what it's gotta be because this is what I want. And it's
Yeah.
like you start to know yourself again, really important principle. Um, and
Yeah.
then we have to adapt to that for the best without just creating an excuse, right?
Yeah. 100%. That's a great example.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you're listening right now, just take a moment to think about the different areas in your life where maybe you need to apply the warrior energy. Maybe it's
Mhm,
saying no to a relationship that's out of balance. Maybe it's being more applying that with yourself, and whether in terms of diet or exercise.
mhm.
Oftentimes, it's very simple. But if we're not doing that, bringing that energy in, just chaos takes over. That entropy, how we call it in physics, takes over, and it's not going to be the end result that you want.
Yeah. Awesome. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, if you're not already, follow us on Instagram, where we shoot off some reels from each week. But let us know what you are, what you're currently working on, what you struggle with. We always want to know to help build the content because um, everybody who's looking to be healthy is definitely at times doing better in certain ways and lesser in others. So it's an important topic that we'll continue to explore. We look forward to continuing this conversation in different ways and means and methods. But yeah, reach out to us on Instagram. It's at the Evolving Practice Pod. And we're always looking for new ways to provide content. So if you have any good ideas for us, please drop us a comment, and don't forget to subscribe, rate and review. It really helps us out. We've been growing every single week
yeah.
basically over the course of the first couple months that we've been doing this podcast, and we're just really grateful for all the support and the people that have been reaching out. So keep doing those things, and we look forward to continuing to evolve with you.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to see you next week.